All right, you're very welcome to this week's RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, RT.ie, and wherever you get your podcasts. We're in the midst of the Euro 2024 group stages with every game live to watch or stream on RTE. We'll chat about that and also last Thursday's final set of fixtures before the mid-season break. And I'm joined today by Keith Treacy and David McMillan. Hope both of you are keeping well on this Monday morning. And I suppose before we get on to the Euros and then the League of Ireland, obviously we're about just over a week on from Ireland's friendly fixtures against Hungary and Portugal. And Keith, what did you make of it overall? I suppose with I suppose the week to reflect back on, I suppose where Ireland are at. Obviously, still without a manager, but having at least picked up a first win over higher ranked opposition for the first time in 2 years.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of pluses in the Hungary game. Obviously, they were unbeaten in 14 games going into it. They're tough opposition. They have some world class players in Szoboszlai. And I love the little battle between Seamus Coleman and Szoboszlai that started to develop throughout the game. And sometimes when you're looking at it from an Irish point of view, I'm still at that stage where I put myself in player shoes, and I think that friendly would be very meaningless to an Irish player. But when you look across and there's 35-year-old Seamus Coleman kicking Szoboszlai up and down the wing and just like he wants to be there, you're thinking, yeah, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we need. And I thought John made the right decisions. He didn't make too many changes. He's getting the structure of a team there. And we played very well. I thought we carried a big threat. Defensively, we were good. We carried a big threat. The distances in midfield, again, were better. As the game wore on, they started to become more bigger and bigger. So there is little learnings within it. But again, I do think there was progression. I know the Portugal game, I'm fairly close to just writing off, Raf, because the Portugal got a little slap on the wrist. They were beat by Croatia in the game beforehand. So it was Ronaldo's last probably ever home game as well. So, they had all the reasons in the world to go and give Ireland a good thumping. And I think they did. They gave us a really good thumping. But they're up there with, being hotly tipped to win the Euros. Ireland are a million miles away from that. So I think John's 4 friendlies, I think 3 of them have been really, really good. I know we didn't get the results we want in all of them, but I think there's progressions. I think we're playing a common sense style of football now. It's pragmatic. We're making fewer mistakes, and we scored 2 goals in the game against Hungary, which is something we don't really do unless we're playing Gibraltar. So, yeah, I think we're going in the right direction, and a lot of people will be still screaming the Portugal result at me, but I think John is in pole position. I think if somebody was to say to me on the face of it, it's a man who has never managed, I get all that. I take all the negatives, but when you strip it back, how many people we've offered the job to, how long it's gone on, his 4 friendlies, give him the job. Why not?
Yeah, David, do you kind of concur with that in general in terms of given what O'Shea's done over the 4 friendlies, and as Keith said, maybe the Portugal game is maybe more of a write-off given the level of opposition and the circumstances that perhaps he is in fact in pole position?
I think if the FAI appoint O'Shea at this point, it'll look like an absolute disaster for them. To have dragged it out this long and then appoint O'Shea, I think just like, what were they doing? I can't see it. And I think for them, it'll be a PR disaster if it happens. Now, I'm not convinced O'Shea is the right man. I don't think the results have been that amazing, that our performances have changed that significantly from the Kenny era. I don't think it's been a monster change. Look, it's fine to write off the Portugal game. I think they are an exceptional team, and even watching Scotland the other night against Germany, I'm sure we'll come to it later, but you can see the gulf in quality. And Scotland are a good side, and the gulf in quality that's there to the top teams. You do go into those games just hoping for anything. A draw would be a fantastic result, and Portugal's just littered with talent. But I think it's just a sticky situation for the FAI now. Like, they do go with O'Shea, I'm sure the country will get behind them, absolutely. But it's just the scenario that we've been left in. You think that you would hope that there's a name there that they can pull out of the bag that, really we can gather behind and as a country and support. And if it is O'Shea, I'm sure that will be the case. But I think the position the FAI put themselves in, I think we'd be hoping for an experienced manager, as they said, someone with international experience and club experience, and can help try and lift the squad. Look, it's not the strongest Irish squad by any means, but there's enough there to be challenging, and I think that's what everybody wants to see.
Yeah, and probably still a couple of months to go before we find out who it is. I suppose the final point on Ireland, Keith, would be just what John O'Shea said at the end of his interview with Tony O'Donoghue after the Portugal game, which was how important it is for as many of our players to be playing regular first team football. And there's a number of players whose situations are a little bit unclear in terms of the future. Troy Parrott, Adam Ida, Caoimhín Kelleher, Mikey Johnston being four who are starters. Obviously what O'Shea said, I guess you would agree with in terms of like those four and others as well need to be at least playing regularly wherever it is, even if it is outside of the English system.
Yeah, definitely. I think Troy Parrott is the one that comes to mind. I know he's gone over to the Dutch league. He's done quite well, and now there's rumours: is he going to come back to a championship team? Is he, what is he going to do? I'd stay where he is because he's getting guaranteed time there. He's playing well. He's scoring goals, and sometimes it's better to be in that environment until you're really ready to take another step. And another season at Troy's age is not a big deal. So John getting him in, having him playing, giving him minutes is obviously showing him that the Dutch league is of a standard that if you play well in it, you will be considered for this team. So if he keeps scoring goals, he's up against tough opposition now, and Adam Ida doing quite well. We all know Evan Ferguson, when he comes back fit, he's going to be the one. But there'll be a couple of lads knocking on the door saying, hopefully, can we eventually evolve into maybe two up front when we're playing lesser opposition, which won't be too often. But there will be times where we can be a little bit more expansive. And yeah, just playing football is the big one for me, Rafa. Caoimhín Kelleher is a very interesting one as well. I think on the face of it, the reason he was so happy with, not so happy being a number two, but he was quite happy with Klopp there. Klopp was the glue. He was thinking he thinks the world of me now with Klopp not being at Liverpool. Is he ready to actually take that step now and move on? So it's going to be an interesting summer, but football is what they all need. They need minutes under their belt.
Yeah, and turning to Euro 2024. So we've had the first long weekend of games, opening with Germany trashing Scotland 5-1 as they're obviously the hosts and in Munich as well. So perfect start for them. The Scots will have to regroup. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. The Swiss in the same group got a really good start against Hungary, 3-1 winners there. And then in Group B, Spain trashed Croatia, you could say 3-0, although probably the game's a little bit tighter than what the scoreline suggests. And then Italy beat Albania 2-1, coming from a goal down after a bit of a very poor throw in from DiMarco, the left back. And then in Group C yesterday, Slovenia and Denmark drew 1-1, and then England, which we'll talk about first, they beat Serbia 1-0, but it was a bit of an edgy performance, it seems. And then Netherlands in Group D, 2-1 winners over Poland. France in the same group are going to be playing tonight. We'll look ahead to that a good bit later on. But first, England, David, I think a lot of the mood music seems to be, it depends who you read. If you're reading elements of the English press, they seem relatively happy. From other instances, I think people are making a point that it was far, far from convincing.
Yeah, definitely far from convincing. I thought the opening maybe 15 or so minutes, 20 minutes, I thought England were very good. They looked sharp. Bellingham in particular, coming off his Champions League win, just looked almost arrogant at times in terms of just his ability, so comfortable on it. The Serbians were probably targeting him a wee bit with some heavy tackles, and it looked like this could be a really bright championship, but they obviously went ahead. A brilliant brave header from Bellingham from Saka's cross, and as I said, at that point it looked all positive for England, but definitely they seemed to slip back. And second half, the Serbians came onto them and caused them a bit of bother. Probably never really tested Pickford enough, but over the course of 90 minutes, they'll be disappointed they didn't sneak a draw. And that said, I mean, you can't. I think people are expected England to go and win comfortably. Like Serbia are a very, very good side. We know that from playing them over the years, that they are a very, very dogged outfit. And the two strikers, Vlahovic and Mitrovic, the talk before the game was would they cause England's back four trouble, particularly in the air, and they never really did that either. So there's two ways of looking at it. Yeah, it wasn't a brilliant vintage performance by England, but their statistics in terms of winning their opening games in big tournaments is really, really poor. So on the flip side of it, you go and you win probably your trickiest game of the three in the group. There's a lot to build on there as well. So I think both sides of it, look, they win the game, they've got to be pleased, but yeah, for sure they'd have been happier with a more vintage performance.
Yeah, a lot of the focus is on selection, and Edie Hamann on the RT coverage last night, he made a point about that. So we'll get your thoughts on this shortly. But let's listen to what Edie Hamann had to say just about shoehorning players into the team.
And as Richie said, Foden non-existent today. He's had a few touches. He never influenced the game in any way in the final third. And then he takes Saka off, brings Bowen on, creates a chance, and then he leaves Foden on another 10, 12, 15 minutes. He doesn't want to make decisions. Because if he wants to play Bellingham in the position he does play, he must not play Foden. Yeah. Foden can't play because he's not a wide player. He's got in Bowen, who's done well when he came on, in Eze and in Anthony Gordon. He's got far more effective players in these positions than Foden is. And you asked me the question before, has he got too many good players? Well, I think you'd rather have more good players than less good players. But when you've got these players, you've got to make decisions.
Yeah.
And as so often with Southgate, I think he's worried, or he doesn't want to make these tough calls. You know, there's only 11 who can play. And if Foden can't play in the system you want to play, he's got to go on the bench. And if he's not happy, he's got to go home. You know, it's end off. There's no two ways about it. And he won't do it. And this is my worry for England, because he'll play the next game with Foden and Bellingham, somebody else next to Declan Rice, and he'll do it time and time again, unless maybe somebody gets injured. But if he's got the option to play these two, he will.
All right, so that's Edie Hamann on the RT coverage last night after England's 1-0 win over Serbia. Now, Keith, I mean, this probably harks back even to thinking like to the Euros 20 years ago, where England had an unbelievable team of individuals, but then they have a situation where they can't fit Scholes, Lampard and Gerrard into the same midfield. Well, actually, they do. And Sven-Göran Eriksson ended up trying to fit them in anyway, but Scholes ended up shunted out on the left, and rather than bringing in another option and maybe bringing one of those three players off the bench. And Foden was fairly anonymous last night. Would you be more ruthless if you were looking at it from Southgate's point of view, and then either drop one of Bellingham and Foden and put one through the middle, and then maybe go for an Anthony Gordon or whoever out on the left?
Well, first of all, I would be flirting with Anthony Gordon instead of Foden out there, because he's a natural winger. And look, I'm one of those who, when you isolate a fullback one-on-one, you prefer Anthony Gordon running at somebody than Phil Foden. And that's not to say that Phil Foden can't run away from people. He can. But in terms of all this, I think, England are the masters at this. They win the game 1-0. They don't play particularly well, but they're up against a very dogged Serbian team. They're playing 5 at the back. They're going to restrict you to an awful lot of chances. Phil Foden didn't have a great game, but neither did Saka, neither did Harry Kane. But nobody's saying, well, what about putting Ollie Watkins up front instead of Harry Kane? They just, for some reason, Phil Foden seems to be the scapegoat, because he can do it for City. He can play off the right, he can play in the 10, he can play in the left, he can even play as a false 9 sometimes for City. But it doesn't seem to translate into the English game, and he seems to, as soon as he plays one bad game, people are saying, oh, we'll get him out and get somebody else in. I would be flirting with Gordon, but not because Foden didn't play very well, just because I love Anthony Gordon. I think he's had a great season. And when Bowen come on yesterday, when you see the difference with him, he goes and runs down the wing, crosses one in, and Harry Kane hits the crossbar with a header. The keeper actually made a brilliant save, but that's the difference with playing with wingers who want to run at people. And again, like you're talking about, are they shoehorning Foden in? They're shoehorning Alexander-Arnold in there as well. He's a right back who's not good enough to get into the team right back, so they put him as a midfielder who's not good enough to get into the team as a midfielder, so they put him in as a holding midfielder against lesser opposition. But if they play France or Spain or Italy or anybody who's half decent, Trent Alexander-Arnold will not be anywhere near the middle of that pitch. So why he was playing last night, I'm not too sure. I think they thought Serbia were going to sit in a low block and Trent would be able to dictate play from deep, but I think that's England's best team, with the exception of Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'd probably put a Gallagher or a Mainoo in there to help Rice, and I'd just let Bellingham, Foden, Kane, Saka go and win the game. And if Foden or Saka aren't having great games, then he can change it up with Gordon. But I wouldn't overreact. Again, I'd give Serbia a little bit of credit. I think the reason people are panicking is because the Iceland game beforehand as well was so poor from the English, and then the first group game now seems to be poor as well. But look, it's 3 points on the board. The Denmark game will be a tricky enough game for them, but I expect them to not get beaten, which means they're all but qualified. So it's far from panic stations, and you'd imagine that Luke Shaw is going to be coming back, so that will have a little bit more natural width in the game, because I'm friends with Kieran Trippier, but when you have a right footer playing left back, you're naturally going to close off that side of the pitch because you want to come in your right foot. And I think Foden was he felt the brunt of that as well, because Trips is closing off that side of the pitch naturally.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think early on, especially where they were dominating possession, he kept trying to drift out to the sort of right back position, which is his sort of natural home. So it ended up being sort of like a 3-3-3-1 sort of formation at that point. But I suppose, David, looking at the the midfield balance, and then as we switch to some of the other leading nations, so the likes of Germany, the likes of Croatia didn't play well and they lost quite handily. But then you look at Italy as well, and even Switzerland. The likes of a Jorginho, a Modric, a Kroos, and a Xhaka, those that type of controlling midfielder, that's something England don't have. And then you look at those other countries, and they have that, and they benefit from it.
Yeah, I would agree everything Keith said there, particularly the point he made at the end about like they clearly were playing Trippier higher than say Kyle Walker, with allowing Foden to come in. And with Trippier just being a right-footed player, his natural instinct was to come inside and cut back. Whereas I think if it was Luke Shaw or a left-footed fullback getting high and wide, I think it would have helped Foden get into the game more. He'd have been able to give that option wide a lot more. So I think if Shawty is fit enough, he'd be certainly pushing to start. I'd agree as well with Keith on the Alexander-Arnold one. It was really strange. If they did play France, there's no doubt, as Keith said, that Gallagher or Mainu would have started. So I find it odd, even if you think tactically maybe this suits. You want to get your team out there that you feel they're going to play the bigger games, get them playing tournament football. And for me, it would have just made more sense that Gallagher starts there. And yeah, I mean, from Didi's comments, that Southgate won't make brave decisions. I think he has in the past. I think he has left out, big name players to fit in at sort of 2 6s, if you like, but whether it was Henderson and Phillips in previous tournaments. He's left out flash players to keep it tight and keep it steady, and that can win tournaments. It's got them to finals and got them into deep stages before. So I think the learning maybe from the Serbia game will be, we need to go and do what we did in previous tournaments. It's bode well for us. So I would be surprised if it's not Rice and Gallagher, Rice and Mainu in the next game. Even if it is Slovenia and Denmark where they expect to go and win, I think he might start to think, how are we going to go through this? How are we going to win this tournament? What's the 11 that I need to pick to win the tournament? And I think it will be those two. And as Keith said, leave it to your attacking players. You have great options off the bench with Gordon, Bow and Watkins all to come off the bench if the 3 or 4 ahead aren't firing on the day. So they have great options, and I think if they can perfect that, they'll go a long way.
Yeah, and then similarly, Germany on the opening night, Keith. I mean, there probably was a debate about whether they could fit Florian Wirtz and Musiala into the same team. They seemed to make it work. Obviously, Scotland probably just didn't turn up as well, but those two in particular were what made the difference for Germany.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Musiala in particular. I think he's a brilliant little player, can burst away from tackles, manipulates the ball really well. Loves a little dribble, and one of those players who get you on the edge of your seat. I was one. People have said to me, who's the dark horses for the tournament? And I've said Germany, and then people have said they're not dark horses. You wouldn't expect them to go and win it, but the fact that they're at home and you're looking and you're thinking, well, the spine of them, Manuel Neuer in goal, brilliant. Rudiger, probably one of the best centre halves around these days, had a brilliant Champions League with Real Madrid. Toni Kroos in the middle. We all know he's retiring at the end of the year, at the end of this tournament. So he has all the will in the world to go and do something. And then you got Gundogan. The only question is Havertz up front. I know they have Fulkrug as well on the bench, but do they have enough? Do they have enough goals in them? They go and hammer Scotland 5-1, a team that I would think are quite resilient, quite rigid, won't give away too much, but they do have the odd howler in them. I remember when they came to the Aviva and we beat them 3-0. You're thinking, this is not, on paper, Ireland shouldn't be beating Scotland because I think they're head and shoulders above us. But Scotland didn't turn up. It was hard to gauge how good the Germans were. It really was, because Scotland were so poor. But yeah, I think they'll go deep. The old saying is you can never write off the Germans. I think they'll go deep, and if you do have a little each way bet on them, I think you'll get your money's worth. But there's so much talent in there. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something. But if Tony Kroos or Rudiger happens to go missing, you do really worry for them. They have some real pivotal players. They have a strong bench with the likes of Leroy Sané and Muller, Emre Can getting called in at the last minute, Pascal Gross. But as I say, if a Rudiger was to get injured, you do worry for them. But starting 11, there's every chance they go very deep, Raf, yeah?
Yeah, and in Group B then, David, I mean, Spain really in pole position there after beating Croatia 3-0. This was supposed to be the group of death, but it looks like it's been killed off quite early from the looks of it. And then Italy coming back against Albania. And I know this isn't like a classical Italy team in terms of like the names, but they look like they're going to be quite solid. From the Spanish point of view, they looked really good, but is it a bit of a worry for them that they're, a lot of their hopes in terms, especially going forward, it's been pinned on a 16-year-old who is obviously brilliant in Lamine Yamal, but he's still 16. He's still having to bring his homework to the tournament and things like that. Like he's, and he's been overplayed arguably for Barcelona and Spain as well at that very young age. You'd probably worry about him a little bit going further into his career if he without enough rest, I guess.
Yeah, it's a big ask. Putting the country's hopes on a 16-year-old, but I think it'll be, look, that was probably a very un-Spanish performance. They probably had less of the possession in the game, but they were ruthless enough to go and score goals, and to go and win that game against Croatia and be 3-0 up at half time is a really impressive result. It's whether they can carry that through for the rest of the tournament. You're relying on Morata to get you goals, who's going to be hit and miss. An excellent finish for their goal, a brilliant first goal from them, split and pass through the middle. And if he can continue form and have a streak of whatever it takes to win the tournament, 7-8 games where he just hits form, that'll be a big help to Spain. But I'd have question marks of how far they can go. But that whole group is an interesting one. Italy, obviously, look, Albania topped their qualifying group and did brilliantly. So Italy to go out, and especially after such a horrendous, I think it was 21 seconds, they were 1-0 down, to come back and win it 2-1 shows a bit of mettle, and it's probably what you'd expect from an Italian team. And a bit like Keith said about the Germans, it's just terminal football. There's something about the Germans and the Italians that even if they're not the most fancy team in the tournament, you still think they're going to push a sort of quarter semi-final, no problem. And that's what you feel about the Italians, maybe more so than the Spanish. But the way they performed on the opening night, the Spanish, you'd have a little bit more hope for them that to keep a clean sheet and score 3 goals against a decent Croatian team is a superb start.
Yeah, and Keith, what do you make of the Dutch? Obviously, they got out of jail against Poland. They were decent in spells, clearly, created a lot of chances, especially in the first half. I know Memphis Depay's headband didn't go down well with Alan Cawley, and it's only tennis players that probably should be allowed to wear headbands. I probably agree with that point. But just overall with the Dutch, Frankie de Jong, definitely a big miss in the centre of their midfield anyway.
Yeah, De Jong's a big miss in the middle of the field. But they look at Veerman and Schotten that started the game, and Rinders are 3 very capable players. So at the back, the Dutch are off the charts with De Vrij and Van Dijk, Dumfries, Sake. They've got some of the best centre halves in the world. Mickey van de Ven as well is knocking about there. So defensively, there's no issues. I think in the middle, they're there or thereabouts. They're solid. I don't think they're probably one of the best midfields in the tournament, but they're solid. I don't think you can have too many arguments with the players you have there. But with Xavi Simons and Cody Gakpo, Depoy, I don't think you see enough goals there to actually go and win the tournament. And, I throw Weghorst into that mix as well. And people say he came off the bench and scored. He did, but I don't see him doing it in the latter stages against, really, really top opposition. So brilliant that he managed to get over the line, but I just don't see it at the top end of the pitch, Raf. I think they're 2 hit and miss at the top end. Depoy generally does turn up and play very well for the Dutch. Weghorst generally plays above himself, but as I say, I think they'll get to a certain point and then the wheels will come off. And to be already struggling against a Polish team that are not very well fancied, I know they got the win, but again, it's probably like the English. They made it a little bit harder than people expected it to be. So attacking wise, there's question marks, but defensively, they can keep clean sheets in the tournament and potentially go a long way.
Yeah, I suppose when you think about the strikers they used to have around the late 90s, early 2000s, if even one of them was 20 years younger, I think they'd be happy. But there was one feel-good moment from those early games, Dave, and that's Christian Eriksen. I mean, 1,100 days after what happened at the opening game 3 years ago at the delayed Euro 2020 to come in, and yes, Denmark didn't win against Slovenia, but to have that moment, and especially after everything that happened to him.
Yeah, amazing, really. I felt old when I realized it was 3 years ago. I think everybody kind of remembers that moment. I can remember watching the game and where I was when that happened. It was a real fright just watching it. And obviously, in general, over the last 3 years, he's done remarkably well to end up at Man United and continue playing at such a high level. And probably just all capped off when he finished it. It was a lovely goal as well. A little just probably midfielder for Slovenia fell asleep and he slips in behind him and finishes it really well. And a kind of classic Ericsson goal, reading back the years. They'll be disappointed, I think, overall. They probably should have won that game. Slovenia's sort of last 15, 20 minutes finished the game strongly. And in the end, you could say it deserved the equaliser because they did put Denmark under a bit of pressure. But yeah, I think for Ericsson himself, he'd be absolutely thrilled to be back and still playing tournament football. And they've got a good chance of getting out of that group. You know, they've England to come, and then it'll probably come down to the match with Serbia. Albeit obviously third place qualifiers as well, so it leaves it a little bit more open, but I fancy their chances of going through. But overall, I think they'll be disappointed, but Slovenia will be delighted. They've both seen a lot of each other, played the group against each other, finished level on points, so I'm sure those two will be glad to see the back of each other.
Yeah, we'll look ahead to some of the upcoming Euro 2024 fixtures a bit later on in the podcast, but we're going to turn to League of Ireland now. And in the Premier Division last Thursday, obviously they played on Thursday because with the mid-season break coming up and also the Euros kicking off on the Friday, that's when the games went ahead in Dundalk. Their revival continues, a 1-0 win over Sligo Rovers. Galway United continuing their great form, 3-0 winners over Drogheda United, who are bottom at the moment. And St. Pat's, we'll chat about this game in a little bit of detail later on. St. Pat's beating Shamrock Rovers 2-1 with a late winner from Brandon Kavanagh. And then Shels staying top, 1-0 win at Waterford. But we'll also talk about some of the transfer situation in terms of Shels as well. And then Bows were beaten 2-1 by Derry City, or keeping chase on Shelburne. But let's start on Pats against Shamrock Rovers. So Rory Keaton equalising for Pats, and then Brandon Kavanagh with the winner deep into stoppage time after Johnny Kenny had given Shamrock Rovers the lead in the first half. And Keith, I know you were on co-commentary for this game on LOI TV, and it was actually a really good game to watch, I thought, from a neutral point of view, even though maybe there were a lot of errors in it.
Yeah, very entertaining game to watch. As you said, Raf, it was absolutely littered with mistakes, but entertaining to watch. And we could have had two penalties in the first 45 minutes, and I think it was within the first minute and a half, Mulroney goes down the left wing, whips one in, and Mason Melia gets there first ahead of Stacey in the Rovers goal. And Stacey, in my eyes, I've seen a couple of replays. It looks like Mason gets there first, and Stacey comes out and cleans him out. Could easily been a penalty, but the referee shied away from it. Fair enough. And there's another one then when Farrugia does so well, bursts through the Pats midfield, leaves three of them for dead, goes inside Turner, and for my money, Turner pulls on Farrugia's jersey, tears him down to the ground. Could have easily been another penalty, but I think the referee took the view that with me not giving the first one, I'm definitely not giving the second one. So, look, I thought there was periods where Pats were on top. I thought there was periods where Rovers were on top. The Shamrock Rovers goal was a lovely goal, really well worked goal, getting down and pulling it back. The Kenny finish is lovely on a swivel. His first touch, he actually has his back to his goal, but turns really well, just fires it low into the back of the net. And then Pats, the one thing to note about Pats, they played with Axel Solberg at right back, and they seem to have an awful lot better balance to the team defensively and in possession. They just seemed a little bit better with a natural right footer out there. And I know Anto Breslin hopefully will be back after the break, so that'll have a natural left foot and a natural right foot. I think, it sounds really basic, but it does help the build up in the team. And then all of a sudden, Pats managed to get himself back into the team. Back into the game. Mason goes and closes down Stacey in the Rovers goal, gets half of a block, and it drops to Rory Keaton on the edge of the 18-yard box. The finish is an absolute thing of beauty because Lopez is a yard off him, but because the turnover happened so quickly, I don't think he has his bearings quite right, because the outside of the goal is just there for Keaton to go and hit. Forced touch out of his feet, whips it in. Brilliant finish, great goal. And then the second goal again is Axel Solberg in the 95th minute down the right wing, whips it into a lovely area, and Kavanagh coming off the bench. I'm sure Stephen Kenny would have been in his ear telling him, go and affect the game, go and win it for us. And he does exactly that. Goes and ghosts into the box in between a couple of Rovers centre halves. And once his timing is right at the run and he goes and meets a flush in the 6-yard box, it goes and fires into the back of the net. And it was good from Pats. And I think the biggest thing from a Pats point of view is they've had a couple of sucker punch over the last couple of weeks with the Bows draw, the Shels defeat in the last minute. You know, Stephen, as a new manager coming in, you're trying to get the lads to play a new way, getting them to buy in. And getting lads to buy in is not as easy as it should be. Players have their own opinion. So now that they've got the 3 points against the reigning champions, I think a lot of the players will be thinking, okay, we can compete and we can go and climb up the league, you know, playing this style of football. So I think it was a good day all around for St. Pat's. And I think with Stephen now having a break with the lads, I expect to see an even stronger St. Pat's after the restart.
Yeah, from a Shamrock Rovers point of view, obviously not ideal, David, but I don't know if you concur with the point that Owen Doyle made on the podcast last week, and it's about the goalkeeping situation, that if they signed a top goalkeeper, they would probably be in with a shout at winning the league. Now, Leon Bowles wasn't involved against St. Pat's, he was out injured, and Lee Stacey, he obviously, as Keith outlined there, he was the one that was in the sticks, and he was, I suppose, slightly responsible for the Rory Keating equaliser in terms of the kick out that he put out that was capitalised on by Keating and then and scored. But do you concur on the goalkeeping situation being the thing that's holding Shamrock Rovers back the most?
It's definitely an issue. I don't think it's their only issue. That's what I would say. I don't think it could ball their form this season. What are they, 12 points behind Shels? I don't think we can pin that just on Liam Poles and Lee Stacey, but definitely it is a problem area for them. And it does surprise me, you know, obviously Poles did quite well when Alan Manus was out injured last year, but you look at, say, an Arsenal, they're willing to bring in they have a good keeper in Ramsdale. They're still going out to try and improve that area as much as possible and bring someone in to challenge in David Ray. And I think, you know, from Rovers' perspective, they were bringing Lee Stacey in as a number 2 and given Leon Poles saying, go ahead, have the number 1 jersey. I think from a Rovers perspective, as a team that's been so dominant for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, I would have thought they'd have gone and tried to bring in a bigger name and to try and challenge Poles. And if Poles does end up earning the number 1 and turning into the keeper you believe he can be, then great. But at least you're putting a challenge down and you're saying go and earn it as well. So it has been a bit of a problem, as Keith talked about there. Like it does look a penalty on media. It's a couple of minutes into the game. It should probably be Rovers 1-0 down at that point, and that's one mistake from Stacey. And then obviously the goal. Look, the goal it's probably poor play. You're playing out from the back when your centre halves aren't kind of high and wide enough. Put yourselves under pressure immediately, and he just gets pressed brilliantly by Pats. And in fairness, even with that, you'd expect nearly got away with it. It's just such a brilliant finish from Keating. He starts it outside the right post and bends it straight back in, and it's a brilliant finish. So didn't really get away with a small mistake there, and that's cost Rovers over the course of the season. Not just their goalkeepers. In other games I've seen there's been mistakes by the back 3 at times and other players. So as I said, I don't think Rovers' issues are just their goalkeeper. I think over the course of the season they've probably not been as ruthless at both ends as they have been over the last number of years.
Yeah, and then Shelburne obviously top at the moment, and I suppose where there's a will, there's a way, Keith. And it's Jarvis against Waterford who made the difference.
Yeah, and it was a good. I seen the highlights back, and I was listening to Damien Duff's interview after the game, and he said he was coaching the wide lads of when to come in the pitch and actually press, and it's not something you can teach because there's no right or wrong time to go. You just have to smell when it's right and when you think you can actually go and win it. And that's exactly when Will Jarvis goes. He wins the ball, and after he wins it, it's sort of, you never panic for him. It's like he feels like he's in control and he uses that bit of confidence. It's a lovely finish, and you can tell Damon after is like, we've been working on this. It's excellent. And his interview after it again, Raf, it's absolutely gold. This time he's not quite as animated as usual, but he basically says, yeah, we're top of the league after, the midway point and we're going into a break, but we haven't won at, and I won't be going partying. I'll be out, I'll be working on myself, and I'll be trying to make myself better for the restart. And he actually says to the interviewer, he said, you better be better when you come back as well, and you'll be on the bench. So he's just keeping everybody on their toes, and I absolutely love that about him. But he seems that sort of manager that no matter how well you do, you want to do that little bit more and that little bit more. And the goalposts constantly move, but he keeps you on side somehow. And look, I was asked, I think Oisin Langan asked me this probably the 2 weeks into the start of the season, can Shelbourne win the league? My immediate answer was no, because I seen Europe rolling around, and I still see Europe rolling around becoming a problem for Shelbourne. But if they can do that against Waterford, not play too well, not have that many chances, not be as dynamic as they usually are, not as aggressive as they usually are out of possession, but go and win 1-0. If they can do that during the European period, there's absolutely no reason they can't win the league. But they've already lost. It was Malloy has gone to.
Yeah, Gavin Malloy is going to Aberdeen on the 1st of July.
He's going to go to Aberdeen. So there's some very important players in that starting 11. Like when you look at Will Jarvis, for instance, Ford, Mark Coyle, Sean Gannon at right back is an extremely important player for them as well. If any of those were to get injured and maybe go to another club, you'd see it unravelling a bit. But for what they're doing, third full season in the league, Raf, Europe to come, top of the table, unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, and Gavin Malloy, I think the last of his appearances for Shels, David, it's against Waterford, because he is moving on the 1st of July to Aberdeen. He's made 79 appearances for Shels. That's going to be obviously a huge blow, if you might talk us through that. But also, I suppose, on the other flip side, the rumours are, in terms of players that they might bring in to strengthen the squad for Europe, and then the rest of the season, Ali Coote to bring him back to the league, and then Sam Bowen as well, and Harry Wood.
Yeah, I think Shels have obviously announced investment a couple of weeks ago at this point, and so it'll be interesting to see if Damien has a few quid to spend. But the recruitment will be, you see it across the league. Bowes, for example, this year brought in a lot of players, and a lot of them haven't worked out. One or two have. I've seen it in my time at the Dundalk, where you make a lot of signings. Some are excellent, but some tail off and leave quickly. So it'll be interesting. And in fairness to Shels, the likes of Jarvis, Harry Wood they had last year, they brought in players, and even their recruitment with the lads in the league, Mark Coyle, etc., who's gone on and performed so well. Sean Gannon, has been let go by Rovers, and as Keith said, he's such an important player. So their recruitment has been excellent up to now. And I think if they can have another good window, obviously losing Malloy is a massive blow, because even Paddy Barrett and that back four in general has been so solid, and it's probably, they're not scoring a huge amount of goals, but they're built on a really solid defence. So that's one area, obviously, that they'll definitely need strength. But I think if they have a good window, there's money to spend, but that doesn't guarantee you get the right players in. It'll be about how Duff and Joey O'Brien have managed it to this stage. And if they have, as they have done over the last, whatever it is now, 2.5 years, built this squad slowly, if they can add 3 or 4 good players into that mix, I think they have the strength there now to go and win the league. And I think the results on Friday and the last minute goals between Derry and the St. Pat's goal just kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. It went from everyone I sort of anticipating Rovers will finally kick into gear and catch up, to now kind of feeling a little bit like maybe this Rovers team can't do that now. Now Derry are still obviously in it, but Derry have Europe as well, so it's a real interesting dynamic. I wouldn't by any means rule Rovers out, but I think the 3 teams now and the gap that's there, it's just going to be a really interesting end of the season. And as Keith says, Europe thrown into the mix. But if Shels can keep the squad fit, add 3 or 4 players to it, I think they'll look really strong going towards the end of the season. And particularly because they played 23 games. They've only 13 left. Like they're well. We're at the halfway point in the league, but they're well past that in terms of fixtures played. So they're in a brilliant position. As Keith said, Duff's not taking his foot off the pedal. He's brilliant at motivating those players, and you can see after every interview how much energy he has, how much he brings to the dressing room. The players love that, and yeah, as I said, I'm looking forward to the end of the season, because I think it's a great dynamic between not just Shels and Derry but Rovers as well below, and whether they can find some form.
Yeah, and then Waterford as well, who of course they lost that game and they were aggrieved. I think there was it wasn't in the highlights package, where Porrigammon had a goal ruled out for offside towards the end, and but still, I suppose they're in a really good position in the league, considering they've just come up. And then Derry City, Keith, right on Shels' shoulders, beating Bohemians 2-1, and really this, they're drawn 1-1, and then Danny Mullen comes up with a winner, and that's hugely crucial for them, especially on the road.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing when you think about Derry and you think about somebody going and chasing Shelbourne down. Authorities, it's been chasing Shamrock Rovers down throughout the years, but Derry just haven't had that consistency. And you're always looking for something to go and spark your season. Is there a turning point? Is there something that gives you that confidence? And going and getting the 94th minute, I think the Mullen winner, that could be something that just sparks. I think Rory will be thinking, it's a bad time for the break to come, because it could just spark something for them. But the break will be there, and they'll have that winning feeling when they do pick it back up. And it was really interesting, because I was speaking to Rory when he came to Inchicore, and we were just chatting away, and we were talking about the season, and I was basically dancing around the subject that I thought Derry were maybe a little bit too inconsistent to go and win the league. But he came out and said it straight away: we're too inconsistent, Keith. We don't win enough games. And I'm not sure whether he was just putting that message out there and, trying to get the backs against the wall. I'm not too sure. But if they can just go and put a few wins together, because, Shelbourne have been inconsistent, but as we've said, I feel there will be dropping off the boil with Shelbourne to come. If somebody can go and get a couple of wins together, it can change very, very quickly. And Derry, on paper, I think are best placed to do that with the squad they have. I think only really rivaled by Shamrock Rovers on paper, but they're misfiring all over the place. So look, a brilliant win from Derry, and I'm sure they'll be getting together now saying, lads, we've a real chance here to go and do something. So let's just try and be that little bit more solid. But again, I hate bringing it up, Raf, because I feel like I talk about it every time we speak about Derry. That pitch up there doesn't do them any favours whatsoever. It's so difficult to move the ball quickly, 1 and 2 touch when you're on an Astro. You seem to be closed down every time you take your first touch. So very difficult for them. But if somehow they can do it, there's every chance they can be very competitive at the end of the season.
Yeah, I suppose on the other side, David, Bows, they had a string of back-to-back wins in mid-April, and they look to be, finding a bit of a groove. And then from the next possible 24 points, they've only picked up 5, and Alan Reynolds already said that they're going to be very busy when the window opens at the start of July. And I know they have a lot more games in hand than the teams below and above them, but they're in a bit of a little bit of a mire at the moment, at least in terms of on the pitch and results.
Yeah, they are. I think that it's a club that's been so well run over the last number of years. It's the first stage where you feel there's sort of just a bit of unsettled feeling around the club. Obviously, the last week with Alan being away with the 21s has caused a bit of a kind of disturbance among fans, if you like. And it rightly probably raises question marks about what's going on in terms of, I think you need to be fully committed to the team that you're at week to week, and to be prepping for a game against Derry all week and not to be there and not to be able to be advising your players and take and train. And it's a difficult scenario. And when the club isn't going, things aren't going perfectly on the pitch, I think a bigger deal is made of those issues. And so it's not a good moment for Bows at the moment. It's just the results, as you said, haven't been great. And I think on the pitch, to be out saying you're going to be getting rid of players, it's not great either for sitting in the dressing room to be hearing that. I think actually reading Alan's comments, it was, the players need help was his first line, and 2 or 3 lines later was, there'll be players leaving. So it's one or the other. And I think, players will be getting mixed messages there. So look, the quicker they get through the July window and start to see the shape, look, to be able to bring in your own players, if you like, from Alan Reynolds' point of view, and to maybe get 1 or 2 out the door, it might help them, but it might not. And I think for Bohemians fans, they want to just see commitment. They want to see a team that's performing well on the pitch, giving everything on the pitch, and I think they probably feel they're not getting that at the moment.
Yeah, and then your former club Dundalk, they're changing the perception of the relegation battle at the moment in terms of like the 1-0 win. They're on their own in terms of the promotion relegation playoff spot at the moment, and Sligo Rovers now suddenly having to look over their shoulders as well now. Yeah,
I think it's a lot perspective. It's for once in the season, it's probably some positive noise coming out of the club, and things just seem to have settled down a little bit since John Daly's appointment, and he's gone in and done a good job, a steady job. As I said, calm things down. There's sort of a settled team there now, and their performances at home, I think, are what's got them above Drogheda at this point, and what will hopefully see from my perspective as a Dundalk person, will hopefully see them through for the course of the season. They've 8 clean sheets at home in a row, which is incredible when you consider the game before that was a 5-0 defeat at home to Sligo. So they've kind of reasonable form. It's hard to say it's brilliant form, but really reasonable form. And they've also lost 1 or 2 players. Obviously, the goalkeeper situation with Shelby, lost him. He's left the club. Scott High was playing every week in midfield. he's gone back from his loan move. So they've lost one or two players, which with a thin enough squad as it was, but they've managed to just eke out a couple of players starting to perform well. Paul Doyle's done very well in the last few weeks. Robbie Benson back from injury. Ryan O'Kane's back in the team, looks sharp again. And Darragh Horgan gets his first goal, starting to show the kind of form that we all expect from him. So looking up a little bit, I wouldn't get carried away. But definitely things looking more positive. I think even from going into the break, from just a visual perspective, to be ahead of Drogheda and be off the bottom of the table after such a bad start where you felt things couldn't get any worse. Yeah, definitely things are looking more positive for Dundalk.
Yeah, and then the final game that was on Thursday, it's Galway United beating Drogheda 3-0, Keith, and Stephen Walsh is the star of the show for Galway on the day, and again the crosses for those first two goals really made the difference. But Drogheda, your own former club as well, they're struggling a little bit now, obviously bottom of the table, but the grit that they've had maybe isn't showing up as much in the last few weeks.
Yeah, maybe just starting to maybe the grit just not coming to the forefront, as you say, Raf. But from a Drogheda point of view, I think they know the story. I think they've been here before. There's nobody going to be pressing the panic button. I think they're very realistic there. I think at the start of the season they might have seen this one coming. We keep going back. There was no UCD. There was no whipping boys. We were always going to think, who is it going to be? So there's no real surprise. I think there's every chance they can go and do something in the remaining fixtures, but being going to Galway, you'd like to think they could. It's a place where you need to fight. You need to fight for every yard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be bruising, but they seem to shy away from that battle, Drogheda, and it's not something that will hold you in good stead when you're going into a relegation battle. But Galway again came to Inchicore, and I was talking to John Caulfield, and he was saying, about a striker. If they had an out-and-out striker, they'd be flying. And for my money, they're already absolutely flying, and they're telling me they need a striker, but Stephen Walsh, if they can get him on that sort of form he was on Thursday night, I'd say they'd be grand. They're going to be absolutely grand anyway. What are they looking up? Are they thinking maybe we can go and nick Europe this year? I'm not too sure. I think they can be happy that they're absolutely nowhere near a relegation battle. And the style of football, I know people say they throw an awful lot of balls into the box. They do, but it's to be admired. And I don't think anybody ever turns up to a Galway game thinking, lovely, this would be nice. You're going to be under pressure. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have to put your head in where it hurts, and you're going to have to go and hurt them when you give it the opportunity. But again, nobody wants that. So you make defenders defend and see what you can get out of them. And it's probably a little bit old school, but I think when you see them sitting fifth in the league, it is what it is. You're getting results, and it's staying in the league by any means. And there's a beauty to it as well, Raf. That's probably me being a little bit old school, but I think there's a beauty to outworking a team. It's not all, tactics and sexy football. A lot is just roll your shin guards up and go for it and give your all. And I think that's what Galway do more than anybody, is give 100%.
Yeah, and then in the Women's Premier Division now, Shels are leading the Men's Premier Division, also the Women's Premier Division, and they had a big win against Galway United, who had been leading the league for a long time. Roman McLaughlin with a 51st minute winner for Shels that keeps them 2 points clear of Athlone, who have themselves leapfrogged Galway. Now, Owen Weirin, the Shels manager, was chatting to Pat Costello after the game, so here's that interview.
Well, Owen, congratulations on the victory. The manager did well, 2 substitutes and they scored. They combined to score.
Yeah. Look, I think anybody that's seen us play or anybody that is aware of the squad knows that our real strength is the depth that we have in the squad, and any player can make an impact at any stage, and you could see that today. Christy and Roma. Christy, we've spoken to Christy about where she can improve, and it's that decision making in the final third, and she picked out the right pass, and what a fantastic finish from Roma, and she deserves that moment more than anybody. She's had a difficult 12 to 18 months, and we're all delighted for her.
Scoreless first half, but were you happy going in at half time?
Not particularly. I think the difference in us in the first half and the second half was us. That's the way we've been for the majority of the season. In the first half I thought we didn't play particularly well, but I also thought they didn't play particularly well, and it probably wasn't the spectacle that everybody kind of predicted. And but the second half was the opposite. You've seen 2 teams that really went for it, and there's a reason why we're both in that position. And just delighted to come out on top in the end.
The attackers will always get the credit, but for the closing minutes there, your defenders really stood tall.
Yeah, I think the last 10 minutes were huge for us, and I think when you have the likes of Amanda, Kiva, Pearl, Jess, they're able to manage the game. They're experienced players and they were able to see the game out. But you look at the impact of the players that even came on and the energy levels of Mia Dodd and Rachel Graham towards the end of the game and Christy Gray, and that's what it's about. It's a team game and we have to be able to finish games strong, and we did.
You're now 10 games unbeaten, but you're not showing any pressure because of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then look, we also count the other competition, the All Ireland Cup, so it's 13 games unbeaten for us, and we want to build on that momentum, and that's what we've spoken about. I think we treat every game in isolation and it's kind of one game at a time, but we also want to go on that run and we want to continue the good work that we've done so far.
So that was Owen Weir and Shels manager there, and Bowes and Peamount drew 2-2. Wexford beat DLR Waves 3-1, and it also meant Brianna Jarrett made her second appearance this season after an injury ruled her out of the early part of the season for Wexford, and she was on the coverage, our Euro 2024 coverage, and then she was talking to Tony O'Donoghue about her return from injury and just where Wexford are in the league at the moment.
Brianna, we were keeping an eye on your match last night, the 3-1 win for Wexford against DLR Waves, and you came back on in the pitch as well. How was the injury and all that?
Yeah, so I tore my calf in pre-season and it was kind of difficult getting back to the pitch, but this is my second appearance. Came on last weekend away to Galway and came on again yesterday, so it was good. We're in a good run of form in the last couple of weeks, which
Up to fifth now?
Up to fifth in the table, which is good because we had a pretty poor start by our standards to the season. But I think the league itself is very interesting this year. Galway were top for a number of weeks. Obviously, Shels pipped them yesterday and have gone top of the league again. So it's going to be an interesting few weeks.
How's the body today then?
Not too bad. It was only a quick cameo. The girls had done the business at that stage. It was 3-1 up, but delighted to be back on the pitch and back involved.
I hope to see you back among the goals as well.
That is Rihanna Jarrett speaking on the Euro 2024 coverage here on RTÉ, and Shamrock Rovers, they're starting to have a little bit of a revival. 4-1 winners at Sligo Rovers, and Athlone Town, who as I mentioned earlier are up to second, beat Treaty United 1-0. Now in the men's first division, Kerry, again, they've been finding a winning touch more often this season. Only one win last season, but this in their second season, they're having a much better time of it, and they are second from bottom, and Longford Town are bottom after a 2-1 win for Kerry against the Midlanders. And then Treaty United were 1-0 winners at Wexford. Finn Harps and UCD shared the spoils with a 1-1 draw. Cork City beat Cove Ramblers 4-1, and Cork are far ahead at the top of the table. And Bray Wanderers beat Athlone 1-0. And before we go, as I mentioned, we're not finished with Euro 2024. We're going to look ahead now to some of the fixtures that are coming up. Obviously, by the time a lot of people are watching or listening to this podcast, the Romania-Ukraine game will be either at least well underway or finished. And then also Belgium against Slovakia, which is kicking off at 5 o'clock. But France, Keith, France against Austria. Now, Austria are one of the dark horses that have been mentioned. Ralf Rangnick, the manager there, they're missing a few key names through injury, but it's going to be a tall order for them against a France team that, we're talking about shoehorning players in. They can shoehorn players onto a bench as well.
Yeah, unbelievable squad, the French. Like you say, Raf, the Austrians aren't a bad outfit whatsoever, but I think David Alaba missing at the back is a huge one for them. Such a rock for them over the years, and so robust. So the fact that he's going to be missing, I think, it's huge for the Austrians. But look, with the likes of Gregorzic and Baumgartner up there, Sabitzer as well in the middle. We all know Sabitzer done really well with Borussia Dortmund. His time at Manchester United as well. So they do have little bits of talent in there, but one or two of their talismans, so to speak, are going to be missing them with the French, with the likes of Dembele, Mbappe, Griezmann, and Thuram possibly on the other wing. You just see them scoring goals, and a lot of people are, they're speaking about the English. The Spanish's opening game was very impressive. People have been gauging the French here, and the French are red hot favourites. I mean, I know people are saying the English, but the English have big question marks over their defence. So defensively, I think the French are fairly sound with Upamecano, Kanate, Koundé, Hernandez. The left back is a decent defender as well. N'Golo Kante coming back into the French squad as well. Always smells danger. You never really lose that ability. So yeah, look, I think the French have I think they have the best squad. Attacking wise, they've got some absolute superstars. Defensively, nice and sound. But it'd be nice to see where they're at. The French are never they're fairly similar to the English in terms of they're never far away from a crisis. If they go and draw this 1-1, there'll be a crisis all of a sudden. So you're never quite too sure what to expect of the French, but they're my favourites for the Raf. I can see them beating Austria handily enough tonight and laying down a marker that they are the favourites for the tournament.
Yeah, and then Group F, David, we'll see it on Tuesday, and this is where Turkey play Georgia, who are managed by potentially Ireland's next manager, Willy Sagnol. But then again, we don't know who it's going to be. But Sagnol, anyway, has been heavily linked over the last few months. It probably would have been Ireland manager by now if Georgia hadn't qualified. I think that was the story. Also Portugal, who we obviously saw close up in Aveiro last week, and they're playing Czechia in an 8 o'clock kickoff. And again, all these matches live on RTÉ, but Portugal are probably the one obviously that we're going to be looking at very closely, because they are one of, if it's not France, Portugal are probably the next favourites.
Yeah, I think, well, I suppose from an Irish perspective, watching that game, they look so impressive that, they're in probably the forefront of my mind. Haven't seen them so recently, but them and France, I think Keith's absolutely spot on. France not only going forward, but defensively. Didn't even mention Saliba, for example. Like, the defensive options are unbelievable. Like, the centre halves they have is absolutely incredible. But Portugal, likewise, I think to still have Pepe in that squad, I think at 41. But with that experience, Ronaldo's experience of so many tournaments, and then Pepper with talent, the Jotas, Bernardo Silva's, like, they've just got so much talent in that team. So it'll be interesting. You'd expect them, and as Keith said, you expect France to go and win tonight. We talked about England. Sometimes it's not as perfect as you think, but we're expecting stylish wins for France and Portugal. And if they do that and they set off on the right mark like Germany, you'll start to think this is a real team. And I think those two, France and Portugal, are probably my two favourites for the competition. And to me, there's probably only maybe 4 or 5 teams that can go on and win it. So I think there's others like the Dutch are strong outfits, but I wouldn't expect to go see them win it. But definitely Portugal and France will be the ones to watch over the next 2 days and see, can they deliver lay down a bit of a marker like Germany has done and say, right, we're here from the start to go and win every game and smash goals in. And I'd be interested to see if France can do that tonight and Portugal tomorrow.
Yeah, and then Wednesday's fixtures, obviously there's a few standouts here. Croatia would look to try and bounce back, and they've got a tricky match against Albania, 2 o'clock kickoff at the Volkspark Stadion, and then Germany against Hungary. Germany will be heavy favourites to get a second win out too and put Hungary under pressure in terms of having to try and survive in the group. But I think there'll be a lot of focus, Keith, on Scotland against the Swiss. The Swiss looked really, really good in their opening game against Hungary, and answered a few questions. Scotland, on the other hand, they know regardless of what happened against Germany, 4 points will be enough to get out of the group, and maybe looking at the more likely 3 points will be against Hungary, but again, even that's going to be tough. So this Switzerland game, it looks like it'll be about survival.
Yeah, I don't think it's a must win for the Scottish, but I think it's a must not lose. I think if they can pick up a point there and go and target the Hungarians, because I know, again, it was a friendly from a Hungarian point of view. I seen them in the Aviva. I was there that day. I wasn't very impressed with them at all. I do give Ireland credit for that, but I do think the Hungarians were very off it. Haven't seen them play their first game, still not too impressed with them. So I think Scotland might be just eyeing them up, thinking if we can get a win there, don't get beaten the next game against the Swiss. But that's easier said than done, Raf. A lot of people think you settle for a draw in your mind, you'll go and get a draw. It's very, very difficult to go out there and be standoffish and play a low block. So they'll have to go and be on the front foot, go and try and win the game, obviously. But, if they were to draw, I don't think it's the worst result in the world for them. And look, again, I think Steve Clarke will be very easily to speak to go in and speak to the dressing room and put that one to bed, because the Germans are linked to go and win this tournament. They're at home. They're one of the favourites. So Scotland aren't one of the favourites. If Scotland can get out of the group, it'll be a success in itself. So there's no problem losing 5-1. I know they were really poor in the game. So the Scotland will improve. I expect them to get better. And, if they can draw, it keeps their last game alive. Just don't lose. You don't want to have your last game against Hungary being a dead rubber that nobody cares about. So there's so many Scottish fans after travelling over there, and I'm sort of living myself through. I'm an Irish man as a Scottish fan. I know English are our nearest neighbours, but I've diverted up to Scotland. I want Scotland to do well, but it's going to be difficult for them. And a lot of the Scottish media and Scottish fans are saying qualifying isn't enough anymore. I'd love to be in that boat. I have to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that either now, in fairness. But I suppose, David, a final point before we go, in terms of the Scots and what Keith mentioned there. I mean, we've had our few rare adventures going to major tournaments, whether it's Italia 90, Euro 88, all of those. We've been out of groups and got to knockout stages a few times. Actually, our hit rate in that from that point of view is actually pretty good. But the Scots, every major tournament they've ever been to, dating back to the start of their history, they've never been out of a group stage. It's actually remarkable. They've qualified way more, like I think more times than the Welsh and ourselves have done combined, and yet the Welsh have been to a semi-final in the Euros. We've been to quarterfinals in the World Cup, and the Scots have been always the first ticket home.
Yeah, well, there's no better chance now when there's potentially 3 get out of a group. So even that obviously helped Ireland with Robbie Brady's goal to get us out of the group that year. But could go one or two ways. Ireland have suffered when I think it was the Trapattoni tournament where we lost every game heavily in a real tough group. Hopefully that's not the way it goes for Scotland, and they can perform better than they did on Friday night. And as Keith said, I think they're a strong enough squad to do that. They have enough quality in their 11. And even on their bench to produce results. And while the Swiss team was very good against Hungary, they're not world beaters either. And I think Steve Clarke will have them right. It's just that their performances were so good in their group. They beat Spain at home. It's really tailed off for the last kind of couple of months. Their performances in friendlies since coming into the tournament just hasn't been at the level that they showed early in Steve Clarke's reign. So he has to somehow get them back to that level again. The team that could beat a Spain, and if they can get anywhere near that they'll be a real tough game for Switzerland, and I would expect them to get points in the group. So it's whether they can turn that form back, turn the clock back to how they were performing probably a year plus ago, and try and get out of the group. And it's definitely achievable for them. With those 2 games left, it's more than achievable. So hopefully they can do it.
Yeah, hopefully for the sake of their fans who've suffered long enough over more than 100 years of their history. But anyway, that brings us to a close. Obviously, you can check the fixture lists on rte.ie/sport, and also just the TV section as well, just to find out when all the games and all the coverage is on. Every game on RTE, and obviously we'll have more podcasts as the tournament goes on. But David McMillan and Keith Treacy, thanks very much for your time today.
Cheers, Raf.